Good morning and welcome to Keeba-Live on the Disruptors Network. Today I'm going to talk about why old people should not be allowed to mess with superglue. We'll be right back. I'd like to take just a moment of your time to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that's our good sponsors over at B&G. That's Bill and Gail sponsored events in Tacoma. Each year there's thousands of event shows and bazaars, crafters fairs, and festivals throughout this area. B&G brings together the best of the best crafters and the best people in this area that have home businesses. They come to actually build response and relationships with you, the viewers, as you walk through and talk and chat with the vendors. Bill and Gail do an exceptional job also of supporting their communities. You know, right now the schools are having a hard time with school bonds and financing for different programs. B&G Events is proud to be one of the sponsors of Mount Tahoma High School. By renting the school's facilities, it helps the different departments of our educational system actually find funding. B&G, they're number one in our community. The next show coming up is going to be in April, and stay tuned to our podcast for more information. B&G Sponsored Events, the premier sponsored event program in the Pacific Northwest. Welcome, everybody. It's always a pleasure to be here on a beautiful Monday. The sky is clear. It's just looking like summer is right around the corner, although we hope it is. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that, well, it's really a very important subject because I found myself really in trouble with it just the other day. Let me go back and explain what happened. You see, the Disruptors program, we have a super co-guest by the name of Candace Thompson with the Wild Child Group. Often I talk about Candace. She's my adopted daughter in this particular instance, and she's always talking about multitasking, how I have to learn how to multitask of what I'm doing, and how I have to prepare myself for doing these podcasts and doing the research and coming up with all these angles and equipment, and that I just really need to learn more and more of multitasking. So I decided it can't be that difficult. She seems to be very, very good at it. So one afternoon I was watching the monitor screen and getting ready for a podcast and looking for some reference material, and all of a sudden I heard this snapping noise, and one of my lenses of the glasses fell out onto the top of the desk. Kind of embarrassing. Well, just as it hit the top of the desk, I decided, I'm going to have to fix this, which would be no problem at all. The phone rings, so I figured, okay, I'll set it up so it's on speaker. I can still talk, watch the monitor, and be able to carry on a conversation simply while I'm supergluing my glasses back together, because I'm cheap. So, hey, how could this be so difficult? So I reach over to the drawer and I immediately grab a hold of the little superglue container, and I'm taking the lid off and I'm talking on the phone, and I pick up the lens and I neatly prepare to put it back into the frames. Well, just as I get everything ready to roll, and naturally I'm still having a conversation on the phone, I discovered that the superglue is not coming out of the top of the nozzle. Hey, no problem, I thought to myself. So I just turn around, grab the scissors, and snip it off. There's a reason why there is such a small hole at the top of the superglue bottle. That's to allow just a little bit of superglue to come out so you can control the stream. When you snip that little tap off, that little tip of the top off, because I'd used it before, naturally it glued itself closed. I had not thought of the calculation of how much more glue is going to be shooting out of there when I apply pressure. So I want you to visualize this. Now I laid my hand on top of my desk to keep it steady. I had the glass in the frames. I squeezed the frame very carefully closed, took the superglue, aimed it strategically. Now remember, I'm still watching the monitor and talking on the phone business at the same time. So as the superglue gets closer to the target, I just add pressure with my fingertips. Just squeeze a little bit in there. It's no problem, you just squeeze a little bit in there. To my surprise, it wasn't just a little squeeze. All of a sudden, it came shooting out. You see, that larger orifice just allowed it to, shall we say, well, it was a major flood is what it was. Now, it poured down my hand and naturally glued the wonderful frames of the glasses to the top of my hand, immediately, of course, and then dripped upon the top of the desk. I'm still on the phone, I want you to remember that, and have flashbacks, and I'm still staring at the monitor, utilizing the visual of information that I needed for the podcast. And now the problem is that the party hangs up on the phone, so I have to reach over. But wait, folks, the glue bottle is now stuck to my one hand fingers, and the other hand is prominently stuck with the glasses hooked to it, and the hand itself is stuck to the top of the desk. Trying to keep control of what's going on my monitor, of course. Now I have just my little finger and a couple of the other fingers that aren't affected by glue, with the glue container still stuck promptly on my thumb and one finger, and I'm trying to shut the phone off at the same time without touching the glass, and for fear I would, well, you know what would happen then. Well, things were going wonderful. They really were. Because by this time, I have totally handicapped myself. I have the glue bottle stuck, the hand stuck, and no way to figure out how I'm going to reach over and grab some solution so that I can try to figure out how to pry my fingers apart. Well, to make a long story terribly short, I finally got the glasses loose. It took a little while, however, to figure out how to, with the other hand, pry and soak and pry and soak and pry and soak, because, ladies and gentlemen, when they say on the bottle, do not allow children to handle this glue or play with it, they should remind us senior citizens it would be a good idea if we stayed away from it also. Because by the time I got everything done, I had two marvelous miracles. Number one, I no longer on one hand had any fingerprints. I just had these neat glue spots where the fingerprints were. And on the other hand, I had this now new configuration of color into the hand after I soaked it off the top of the desk. The moral of this whole story is, of course, besides not thinking that children or older people should, citizens of my age naturally, should be using super glue, the moral of the story is don't listen to somebody telling you how to multitask. It's not going to work, folks. Multitasking is something that it takes a real genius to do. I can admire people that can type and watch the monitor, podcast, and pick up the phone on voice command and still conversation fluently with the podcast without even batting an eyelash. And me, well, I think I'm going to just go back to doing one thing at a time. That's simply getting ready for my podcast or gluing my glasses. Hey, until we talk again, this is Bill, and I want you to keep on smiling. And remember, no matter how old you get, the world is still a beautiful place to live. If you'd like more information on our show, please do us a favor. Stop over at www.keepasmiling.com. That's www.keepasmiling.com. We'd also like to thank bensound.com for our music intro.